And on behalf of Climate Action Ned and the Blue Hill Public Library, I extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you joining the conversation today. The image of the net in our title is an important one to our identity. We want to catch as many organizations and persons as possible who believe in science-based climate policy. And we want to include the many faces of injustice that our society is currently facing, especially the climate injustice, which is being passed on to the younger generation to cope with and to solve. Our commitment is to keep climate justice concerns at the forefront of local public conversations, be they civic presentations or informal social gatherings, be they church social justice groups or school boards. And we are making every effort to assure that our work is of a multi-generational nature. As we begin our time together here today, I invite you into a moment of silence as we remember the indigenous peoples who have inhabited this land for many thousands of years and offer our gratitude to them for taking such exquisite care of this beautiful place that we call home. How fortuitous that we gather today on the spring equinox, on the day when light and darkness balance. It's also World Water Day, and it's also the 5th anniversary of the assassination of Berta Cáceres, a Honduran climate activist. Nature, we know, has so much to teach us. Through the cycle of seasons, we are reminded that life is a constant process. There is an innate and universal longing buried deep within the memory of each of us for a return to unity and natural relatedness to all living things. If we will once again, on this beautiful earth feast, be willing to push beyond our rational and intellectual minds and allow ourselves to explore and celebrate the world in all its diverse dimensions, we may regain connection with that deep inner unity that has been from the beginning. This act would enhance healing within ourselves and within the earth herself. Let us, in this glorious season of spring, be awed by a blade of grass, enchanted by a tiny snowdrop pushing up through the frozen earth, alert to the budding of tree and flower, attuned to the song of returning birds and the cry of the peepers, and commit ourselves to celebrate the beauty that Mother Earth gifts us with each and every season.
What a pleasure to be with everybody today and be here for this event. Maine does a lot of things that are first in the country, and this may be one of the first things where this kind of conversation has been held. And I'm so grateful to everybody, especially Tony and Ann and all the work they've done and all the young people who have made this happen. So this poem we're about to hear from Anna Trobridge was written a couple of years ago. She was a student at George Stevens, and we brought Kelsey Juliana here from Eugene, Oregon. Kelsey was the lead plaintiff in the case Juliana versus US. It was aimed at insisting that the US have a sustainable environmental policy, that it had to follow the science of climate change. And it was being supported by our Children's Trust. If some of you don't know about this case and all the young plaintiffs who were involved, you can find it on our Children's Trust website. And there's an enormous long history now of over the years that this case has been in the courts. But Anna wrote this beautiful poem, which we're now going to see a video of her reading, and then we'll talk about it briefly before we go into the other discussion. Thanks, Kendall.
My name is Anna Trobridge, and this is a poem that I wrote for ninth grade English class when Kelsey Juliana from Our Children's Trust versus the United States came to our school. She is a part of a group of young people who are filing a lawsuit against the United States government for their violation of our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness by allowing fossil fuel companies to destroy our environment. So this is You Shall Reap What You Sow. Why did you do it? What good did you think could ever come from all this? It's like killing your own mother, the one who shaped you out of the bounty of her body. It's like the giving tree, the one who poured all of her love and hope and life into you, down to the last drop, only to receive cold-blooded destruction in return. How can you still deny the brutal reality we have brought upon ourselves? When you learn that 200 species of plant, insect, bird, and mammal go extinct every 24 hours, when you see the smoke, the scab-like smog, and the grayness where once was green, how can you still say, I am in the right? How can you still say, it's all a hoax? Look around you. We are destroying our planet. And so far, it's the only one we've got. So when you see fish lying belly up in the oil-scummed water, when you see the pipes stretching like greedy fingers into the once blue sky, spewing thick blackness into the atmosphere, when you hear stories of how it was in the old days, when you could drink safely right out of a stream, when the ocean's bounty was not disintegrating because of us, when Earth's life had balance to it, how can you still say that this is all make-believe? We were given a vast, diverse, astonishing jewel to make our home upon, but we forgot how alone we are. We forgot to ask, if the time comes, who will save us from ourselves? Instead, we wasted with disregard, scouring Earth's bounty dry. We, the human race, are afflicted with a deadly case of hubris, and every time we deny, we take a step closer to our grave. Every time we praise the beautiful, clean coal, we slide closer to the edge of an abyss from which we will never return. An abyss lined with false promises and dollar bills is an abyss nonetheless. And every time we poison the waters, flatten the mountains, tear our forests limb by limb, and fill the sky with smoke, we take away from our children, our children's children, and all future generations who will say, why did you do it? What good did you think could possibly come from all this?
Anyway, I've heard Anna's poem a lot, and watched her deliver it with a mask and without a mask. I think maybe with the mask is even more powerful. I feel I think no matter how hard we have been activists or how hard we've tried to be activists, the accusations of the poem still, hit like a hammer on the head and in the heart. I think one of the things that I find the most difficult about it is that it's not that any of us, especially older people today, either adults or elders, whatever we call ourselves, believe that the climate crisis is a hoax, that we're really in denial. What we are, though, is we've been persuaded in this culture for so long to not really accept the contingencies of what reality is telling us. And we haven't been able to respond fully, not all of us, of course, but many of us, because we have been taught that we don't have to accept the realities of nature and of nature's laws. And I think that's one of the hardest things about that poem, is that it's, saying, why haven't you really responded to the reality of this situation as fully as reality requires? And that's very tough for me. I think it's probably tough for most of us, who are here today to talk about this with other people, especially young people. But let's have that conversation, because that's why we're here, and it's so exciting to have it, because it's only by having this conversation that we can commit ourselves, perhaps recommit ourselves to doing the work that has to be done, if we're going to thrive on this planet. Not just us thrive on this planet, but every other species thrive on this planet, which is what we want and what we know is necessary if we are going to survive. So we have these questions, that we're going to first address to the elders, and we hope that a lot of you here will respond. Obviously you'll take this very seriously, and you wouldn't be here if you weren't taking it seriously. So let's look at this first question, and then talk about it for a little bit, and then we'll have, well, here they are right there. The first one for the elders: if you were a teenager with your present level of understanding about today's climate crisis, what choices would you make regarding your life? I mean, going way back, what would your college major or your technical training be? What about your career and livelihood? Where would you live? How would you live? What type of dwelling? What community engagement and political activity? In other words, if you knew what you know, how would you have changed your earlier life? Who would like to talk about that?
Hi, this is Doug. If I were a teenager, I would hope that I could divest myself of all those flaws that I had as a teenager, not just the relative ignorance, but of course, other dimensions. That said, I come at this subject out of my experience as a veteran, and that has certainly led me to have been, my experience as a veteran or as a military person has led me to be perhaps an activist on steroids with respect to militarism. But it was only in the recent years I've become aware of just how terrible an impact our militarism has had on our planet, on the well-being of people around the earth, and our militarism's impact on the climate. So if I were to be again a teenager and know what I know now, I certainly would not end up being in the military, and I would in fact have begun working on behalf of the planet as a teenager, and hopefully through my adult years. So that's been my point of entry, the perspective that's led to my engagement with regards to this subject today. My life's trajectory would have been vastly different if I had known those things, if I had known how profoundly our militarism has impacted the planet and our climate. I would hope that I would have invested a great deal of energy in doing something about that at a much earlier date in my life than has evolved and has been the case.
Doug, can you say something more perhaps about the extent that the military, I mean, the amount of fossil fuels and carbon that the military puts into the environment in relationship to other entities?
Well, I think the figure of speech we hear most often with regards to this subject is that it really is the 3,000-pound gorilla in the room. It's the truth that we generally refuse to acknowledge today, that the military is the single entity, the single greatest contributor to our carbon footprint on the planet. It's the single greatest consumer of carbon fuels. So there seems to be more important aspect of the subject that we can address than the military's contribution to the assault on our climate.
Wow, thank you very much. I think that I'm really glad you brought that up, and because in a lot of the discussions we hear about climate, that's the one that doesn't get talked about, and what doesn't get talked about in a lot of our political issues is where the money goes and where the carbon comes from. And so that's a really important thing, and I'm glad that happened. Now, who else would like to talk about how they would live today if they were an older person living a younger life?
So my name is Tom Ring. I'm a retired chemical engineer, and I spent my entire career in the oil business. And so I feel like I'm paying penance now for all the misdeeds I did. I probably would still go into chemical engineering because I think that engineering is very important to help solve the problems that we have in front of us. And I think one major factor in all national economies, almost all around the world, are industries. And we're going to solve this problem. Industries are going to have to be part of the solution. So I probably would also want to be as involved as I could be in advocacy of doing something to solve the problem, connecting with those in governments and so on. So that's what I would do.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for your admission about the oil industry, but you're absolutely right about engineers. We desperately need engineers to solve these problems. And there'll be some, a little later in the program, there'll be some great ways to contribute at this moment. So thank you very much for that. Tony, I see you waving.
Well, it's just as related to where I would live, where would I set up my home. I think I would still choose Maine and as a good place to live. And I think we've heard that from some of the climate scientists that we have had present for at this organization, Climate Action Net. So I think Maine is pretty good. And they say that in the same way that we are experiencing climate or experiencing at this time coronavirus refugees, or that we're going to be experiencing some influx of people coming to Maine because of climate.
Yes, I think that's definitely true, and that could actually require an important moral response, as well as economics and all the other things that will be affected by a lot of people wanting to come to a safer place like Maine. A real problem for all of us.
I'd just like to add that Paul Majewski at one of his talks said the reason Maine will be so desirable is because we have such excellent clean water, fresh water, and small farms. And those two things are going to be very important in the future as the climate deteriorates.
I'm Dick Hutchinson. Could I add to this discussion?
Please.
I worked for the Department of Army throughout my career as a civilian employee. I wound up there more by chance than by anything else. They gave me the only job offer that was available that year. I'm a chemical engineer. And I think that while I spent my career there, I came to realize there's only one thing on earth I really hate, and that's warfare. And I think if I had started initially knowing the kinds of things that you cited here, that I might have worked for the military, but I would have worked even harder to try to find ways that would really reduce or preclude warfare.
Thank you for that, Dick. That's, I'm sure a sentiment shared by just about everybody here. Anybody else want to say
Just
anything? Oh, go ahead.
let me just say, add one thing, and that is, I never met anybody, any of the officers in the military, and I did have access to the different levels that favored warfare. It raises a rather profound question of, well, who in the world is deciding to initiate these warfares? And generally speaking, it's not the Department of Defense, it's really our politicians.
Well, I don't think that's a decision. Who else wants to talk right now? I could hear a voice.
Well, okay, I defer.
I don't know whether you're deferring to me or not. This is Doug Cowan.
Yes, I am.
Just a couple of things. One is as I've lived in Maine and been in touch with organic farming, I'm aware of how special a life that could be. It's a lot of hard work, but you really are doing the climate work that is essential for the long-term viability. So that would have been a definite option for me. I ended up in medicine, which in many ways I loved. I helped a lot of people, but it's also a very sick system that I was part of and complicit in. So, I don't know where I would be around that. And I think the other thing I wanted to mention is my daughter-in-law, they live in Africa, my son and daughter-in-law and family. And she has been, since the first time I met her, she has been totally organic in the sense that, she doesn't want any of her food in touch with plastics. She only uses non-toxic materials for everything, whether it's, she does the research in this, she really looks at it. It's, in some ways it's elitist because it costs money, but it's really important. And I think my life would have been quite different operationally if I had known what she knows and has been passing on to me at the early phase of my life. I would have operated on a personal level with my family differently. And I would have worked to really point out the toxicity of so many things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis in our lives.
Oh, Doug, that's terrific. I mean, I think that one of the things that's so important about that is that, the work that your daughter-in-law is doing as an individual, should be done by the health industry and the EPA. Right. They should be doing that for everybody. Everybody's health is as important as that. And I think a lot of us, if we were younger, would be insisting on that. And of course, at our age, we can still be insisting on that. But anyway, thank you for that. That's really great. Kendall, what about our time now? Should we go on to the next group?
We are getting a little low on time, so it might be a good opportunity to have some younger people speak for a few minutes, and then we could go into breakout groups.
Okay, I did want to hear some adults talk about the guidance they would give to young people, but let's go on to younger people, and I think that's a really good idea. So, do you want to put up that question, or I can just read it?
They are right in the chat. But if you'd like,
I'll read it because not everybody probably knows how to access that. So this is the question that we have for young people. It is, what kind of support, help, and encouragement could older generations provide you with as you engage in climate action and move in the direction of addressing all the injustices that intersect with it? So for younger people, what is it that older people could be doing to be the best help to for your activities and actions?
Yeah, I can chime in.
Oh, good. Amara, hi.
Hi. So I think that in order for, older folks to be the most supportive in this cause, I think that really just showing up for, initiatives and efforts in supporting young folks through that way, I think is the most supportive thing, at least for me. In Bangor, we planned a climate strike, of course, when we were still organizing in person. And so this strike was primarily organized by students at Bangor High School, but through standing outside, we actually got quite a few older folks who joined us. Were holding up our signs, chanting our chants, and to see this kind of intergenerational collaboration and support really filled my heart. And I think that is the most supportive way that older folks can show up for this cause.
That's great. So do you think that that you as younger people how do you feel about other ways of reaching across that divide? You know, how do you reach out to young people, older people, besides standing on the street and doing a demonstration?
I could answer, but I see there's a bunch of hands raised, so I guess I'll pass it off to someone else.
Great.
I can go next real quick. Helen, nice to her. I think what I think is really like within that question, what kind of stood out to me is the encouragement part. I don't think young people need any encouragement. I think we're very much encouraged and panicked enough. I think what's important is that older folks trust young people, don't belittle young people. That, you know, it's like, because I feel it's one thing to be like, yeah, that's true, but actually be like a true ally. And when someone of like another, maybe older folks like speak against young people in their experiences, that, you know, older folks really are an ally and stand their ground with young people. And I think financial support is also important. It's kind of tough to, you know, try to go to college and try to get a job and have unpaid internships and try to do climate activism. And yeah, so I think those are my thoughts. I'll pass it off to the next person.
Great, Helen. Thank you.
Do you want to go, Izzy? Or I have a direct response to Helen's.
I think you can go first.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think like one of the biggest ways to support like youth organizers is to like directly fund our organizations. A lot of our orgs run shoestring budgets or like don't have budgets, and a lot of us within these organizations, like Maine Youth for Climate Justice, for example, like lives on the idea that all organizing is paid work and all organizers should be like stipended, or like a stipend should be provided. And that also eliminates barriers of accessibility with getting into organizing, you know, because like organizers tend to self-select from privileged backgrounds, from people who like have the time and energy to organize, or else they have to make sacrifices, and like providing some amount of money. And that's a great question, because a lot of us, and this might be another thing, a lot of us don't really have necessarily the information or training to build a fundraising apparatus. So reaching out and having conversations with youth organizers about like, how do you fund your organizations? How can we help you fund or bootstrap the skills needed to fund our organizations?
Anthony, that's very good points. Thank you. Right, that's clearly a major issue.
Mm-hmm. I guess I can go next, but I think Luis, you were before me, so.
You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I guess I resonate a lot with what with Helen's point, and that was what I had in mind when I raised my hand, of like the idea of encouragement. But also, I feel like at the same time, if I think more about it, it's true that young people sometimes need more encouragement, because like we're not usually used to like presenting our ideas or standing by our principles. But especially, I think like it's so powerful to hear what other people, like other generations, like feel about the climate action, and like just hearing like some of you just now like share with us your experience of like, if you were young, you would have done things differently. I feel like acknowledging that, it's very powerful for young people to feel like what we're doing now, it's something that will like change our future, or like in a good way, but also like not put it in our like as if it is our burden to change everything, but more of like sharing this like need to change. Okay, perhaps you wish if you were younger to have changed things. And now we can learn from that, but it's not only our responsibility to make everything change. So I guess like support in this and like more like an equal like fight kind of, not fight, like just like encouragement. I think that's something that would be very precious to hear from just like elder generations in general.
Oh, thanks, Isi. That question of accepting responsibility and then finding that same acceptance in other people and sharing it together, it makes it so much more powerful to work together that way. Also joyful. Thank you. There's somebody else who wanted to talk.
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar to what EC said. I absolutely agree with what everyone has said so far. I mean, in a lot of ways, the people that are here aren't really the people that need to hear how to support, because you already are showing up and being involved, but just educating yourself and learning how you can make an impact from your position in life, so that we can all work together and all be coming from the same standpoint of education and knowledge and awareness and passion for this cause.
Yeah, that's terrific. I think, you know, I hear, well, I get, and I suspect a lot of the older people here get, you know, appeals practically, you know, every other day from the Sierra Club and the this and that. I mean, not that these are, you know, organizations one shouldn't support, but we don't get, you know, appeals from the youth climate action groups, and that we should be seeking those out and giving, you know, support to that, because that's, I think, you know, one of the things that way we can share the responsibility is by, you know, is financial. It's something we can do. And that's, I think those are really good points.
Magnolia, do you want to go ahead and start?
Yeah, I'm actually going to pass it to my co-breakout room leader because there were a lot of eager volunteers. So Gary, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm so grateful that Magnolia led that, and then I agreed to take the notes. And I'll just point to a couple of things that link up. That courage is required to stand up to vested interests. And that led, or didn't lead, but then in the fourth question, something related was a long discussion we had about plastics and how they are present in so many ways. And a particular conversation was around a company like going to Walmart. It's not just that they send out all kinds of stuff in plastic bags, but that all these things in the store are packaged in plastic in all kinds of ways. And that we might, instead of just not shopping at Walmart, go there and protest with signs calling upon them to stop buying stuff that's encased in plastic, to stop using plastics, et cetera, et cetera. And also the awareness that the plants that produce plastic tend to be located where the poor and people of color have to live.
But I believe I also had Dud as one of the group leaders. Is that correct?
Well, I thought we had a good conversation. We certainly are in accord with one another, not to be surprised at all about that. Doug, I think it's fair to say Doug is grateful that we in this area in Maine are much more engaged than he found those to be in Tucson. So he feels like we're in a much better place up here in Maine, which I think we might all agree with. There was a chord in our group, again, not surprisingly, that one of the most disturbing aspects of this all is the intersection between the climate crisis, or the impact of the climate crisis on the disadvantaged. That I think is one of the most, it was probably mutually felt that that's one of the most disturbing aspects of what we are facing. Doug also suggested that the aspect of this all that he would like to work on would be the inequities of it all, the consequences of the climate crisis. Where we find hope. Pat finds hope in art. I think probably we all find hope in art, our hope in art. And I guess those are some of the high points that we discussed. Well, let me say one other thing with regards to courage. It was felt that courage isn't so, I'm characterizing what I heard today, that courage may not be such an essential ingredient today as more and more, fewer and fewer deniers are about. More and more of us are beginning to understand that it's a do or die situation. Heather in our group suggested that it's not a question of courage, it's a question of necessity, really. We must be engaged. It's a do or die state that we're in.
Okay, I think I also had Riley Stevenson. Riley, do you want to take a moment to share?
Yeah, so we had a great conversation in our breakout group and talked a lot about we talked a lot about the courage question and sort of what that looks like, and a lot about sort of how the intergenerational sort of working together can take place and how important all of that is. And also just, we had a lot of enthusiasm in our group about sort of ways to get involved and what are action steps leading out of this, and sort of how we can in the future look towards continuing these collaborations and figuring out how we can all best work together to create some great intergenerational change.
I'll go next, Amanda here, and I'm gonna echo a lot of what Riley said. We had a great conversation too. And in regards to what gives us hope these days is just kind of seeing the fact that there is mobilization around climate change. And it's also, you know, people had brought up watching their grandkids and what they're being taught and things like that, and having the option too to invest in more environmentally friendly investments as well, and thinking about the role of not only the role everything plays in climate change, whether it's individuals, but also politicians, the role of our politicians, and also thinking about the role of our corporations and really holding corporations responsible for their polluting actions.
I'll go with a couple comments about our group. We inquired into climate justice and talked about its importance in climate change action in general. And I'll just read a few comments about courage. Pretty much everyone mentioned something about courage. One person mentioned that it takes courage just to face extinction, just to face what's going on, the suffering that's going on. Someone else mentioned that this is a situation where we're forced to be courageous. We're forced to take up courage. And then someone else mentioned that having the courage to step up, even if it means stepping on toes. So we talked about different aspects of courage and had overall just a really great conversation.
I just say a couple of things because I know our time is running short, but again, wonderful conversation, and the comment was made that the young people are creating a new narrative and making it clear what kind of future they want. And we need to be listening to that. And a lot of talk in terms of courage, about the courage to change our lifestyles and the role of the consumption that takes place in our lives, and that we can't just look to technology to solve our problems. We have to change who we are and the way we live. And then a lot of the other comments have already been made. Thank you.
I think next up on the program, we have Riley Stevenson and Thomas Corstjane's little report. I do want to let everybody know that the program was meant to end around 5:30. So if anybody needs to leave at that time, like feel free to do so, but the recording, the Zoom won't stop. We can keep going to get through the rest of the program if needed, so.
Great. Well, I can go ahead and chat a little bit. So I'm hoping to present and just share a little bit of information about some of the climate opportunities in Maine. So the first, and these being youth-led efforts, the first is Maine Youth for Climate Justice, which is a coalition of over 300 youth from all over the state. And this group is fighting for bold climate action, a just transition, and a livable future in Maine. So MYCJ, or Maine Youth for Climate Justice, was founded in 2019, and it's open to anyone under the age of 30 who's interested in engaging at the local and state level on these climate justice issues. Many of the folks who are on this call are involved in MYCJ, so can definitely also have knowledge about this group. Maine Youth for Climate Justice engages a variety of youth-led groups, adult ally organizations, and other community partners. The group works remotely over Zoom, Slack, and email, and it's made up of a core group with each represented organization, monthly statewide calls for all members, and then game nights and other mood-boosting activities. MYCJ also has multiple working groups, so that's another way for folks to get involved. So an action step for you all, I'm going to put in the chat ways to get to our different social medias and also sign up and sort of learn more about the group. So for anyone who's interested in learning more about Maine Youth for Climate Justice, definitely feel free to follow any of the links that I've just put into the chat and learn a bit more about the group.
And MYCJ is also linked on the Climate Action Net website, along with the group that I'll be talking about, which is the Coastal Youth Climate Coalition, or CYCC. The Coastal Youth Climate Coalition is a group of Mid-Coast and Down East high school students and groups with an overarching leadership team created in order to facilitate school projects, youth outreach, and community involvement. We recently restructured the group into 3 main pillars: projects, outreach, and social media. And we are currently focusing on seeking out new members and revitalizing our group. We don't really have any events going on right now, but you can follow our website and our social media. The link to that, it is linked on the Climate Action Net website, which I think you all have access to, under the local youth involvement tab, and stay tuned for some events.
So Riley and Thomas, thank you so much for all those that information, and also the update of what you're doing and how other people can get involved. Tony and Ann, should we go on to invite Chloe into this now? I can't hear anything. You're muted.
I'm just curious to ask some of the young people, well, Riley or Thomas, what was the circumstances that were taking place where you sort of committed yourself to aggressively engage with climate action? If we just take a minute for that, maybe either Riley or Thomas.
Or Magnolia or Henry.
Or Magnolia,
or Henry.
Or the rest of our climate interns.
Or Amara.
Stipends. Anything to chime in about that, Thomas or Riley?
Magnolia or Henry?
If no one else wants to go, I mean, I think a lot of us feel that, climate activism is, as was mentioned earlier, sort of an essential, because we're hoping to live on this planet for a little while, and we feel like it's something we have to do.
Yeah, I agree with Magnolia. Ever since I learned about, what's going on with this planet in 7th grade, I felt a responsibility to make change. And I'm not sure, it comes in different forms and at times in different bursts of passion, but just feel responsible to do something.
Yeah, I've always kind of been aware of the climate crisis, but my art teacher, Miss Pease, came to me with this opportunity for this internship, and I just jumped at the opportunity to get involved. because I'd never really been part of the action.
Yeah, sort of along the same vein as everyone else. I moved to Maine when I was 10 and sort of was so taken by the wonderful natural beauty and resources of living here and recognizing my own role in sort of the systems that are threatening this place that I definitely felt the need to get involved and figure out how I could use my own voice to sort of fix a lot of those issues that I see and protect the place I love so much.
All right, I think we're coming to our close. I just want to give a little bit of information about resources that are available. And this one that I mentioned first is very, very important. It's a web article called Talking with Young People About Climate Change, and it's on Johanna Blackman's parenting website. She is a social worker who specializes in climate parenting issues, as well as one of the directors of A Climate to Thrive. And this will all be, this information will all be placed on the website. Also, by filling out the contact Get Involved form, you can connect with Dr. Steve Benson, who is one of our Climate Action Net counselors, and he's also a psychologist, regarding resources for individuals experiencing excessive stress from climate concerns. There will be a link to the Pine Tree Amendment advocacy and action groups on the website. And we also want to mention Citizens Climate Lobby's Blue Hill chapter. Philip Osgood is also one of our Climate Action Net counselors and is in the process of arranging visits with elected officials and invites anyone, especially the young, to participate. And of course, if you'd like to continue to participate in intergenerational climate conversations, we ask you to fill out the Get Involved form on the website. So contact information for Maine Youth for Climate Justice and Coastal Youth Climate Coalition is available on the website under the Youth Initiatives tab. And that website is www.climateactionnet.org, one word. So we are extremely grateful for everyone who showed up today. I think all of us are aware of how important each individual story is to make up the wonderful fabric that we need to weave at this moment so that we will be able to make significant change in our society and for Mother Earth. So happy spring. Celebrate, celebrate, celebrate the beauty that we have been gifted with. It's, if you love something, you protect it. So let's continue to work for the goals that have all been expressed here today. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kendall and the Blue Hill Public Library. We couldn't have done this without you and without every other person.
Thank you all so much for coming. I'm so glad I got to help out with it, and it was great seeing everybody and hearing all of your thoughts. I hope to see you again for future programs. So enjoy the rest of the first day of spring.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.